Knights of the Mannerheim Cross, 21 to 30. Part 3, the first 20 stories have now been told, but the history of the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross has only just begun. In the previous episodes, we have seen men from almost every level of warfare, enlisted soldiers and non-commissioned officers, young reserve officers, Jaegers and generals, anti-tank soldiers, pilots and medical personnel. We have seen actions in which a single soldier was able to change the course of an entire combat situation, and we have seen commanders whose decisions affected the fate of thousands of men. In the previous episode, we reached night number 20. Now we continue exactly where we left off. Ahead of us are Knights of the Mannerheim Cross numbers 21 through 30. 10 new men, 10 new stories, and once again, 10 different paths to one of the most prestigious military distinctions in Finnish history. Their stories take us back to the Continuation War in 1941, a time when Finnish forces were advancing rapidly across the Karelian Isthmus and into East Karelia. The front was moving. Supply lines were stretching. Battles were fought in forests, villages, along roads, and across difficult terrain surrounded by lakes. And in the middle of all this, individual soldiers were forced to make decisions when there was not always time to ask their superiors for orders. The Mannerheim Cross could be awarded regardless of military rank. That meant an ordinary private could stand among the same knights as a senior. General A-man's position was not what mattered. What mattered was what he did when the situation demanded it. Some of these men survived the war, others never returned home. Some of their names are still widely recognized in Finland today. Others have almost disappeared from public memory over the decades, but behind every name was a real person, and behind every night number is a story. In this series, we will tell them one by one, from the first night all the way to the last. Now it is time for numbers 21 through 30. Who were they? What did they do? Where did they fight? And why were they appointed Knights of the Mannerheim Cross? We continue exactly where we left off. This is the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. Part 3. Knights number 21 through 30. And first, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 21. Number 21. Carlo Alexanteri Heiskanen, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 21. Carlo Alexanteri Heiskanen. His story begins in eastern Finland and ends in the highest military office of the Finnish Defense Forces. He was a Jaeger, a veteran of 3 wars, a divisional commander, a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, and eventually commander of the Finnish Defense Forces. As a soldier, he became known for his calmness under pressure, earning the nickname Kilmakala, or Cold Kala. Carlo Alexanteri Heiskanen was born in Joroinen on October 28, 1894. His parents were Olof Fredrik Heiskanen and Maria Korhonen. His father died while Carlo was still a child, but Heiskanen received an opportunity to attend school and studied in Kuopio. The First World War changed his life. Finland was still part of the Russian Empire, and the Finnish independence movement was searching for ways to separate the country from Russia. Young Finnish volunteers secretly traveled to Germany to receive military training. Heiskanen joined the Jaeger movement in 1915. He served in the Royal Prussian Jaeger Battalion 27 and was assigned to its pioneer company, the Finnish Jaegers. Received not only training but genuine combat experience on the eastern front of the First World War. Heiskanen fought at the Missy River, the Gulf of Riga, Schmarden, and the Aa River. There he experienced artillery fire, trenches, and modern warfare. He also developed a reputation for remaining calm, even in dangerous situations. Finland declared independence on December 6, 1917. The following year, the country descended into civil war. Heiskanen returned with the main body of the Finnish Jaegers, arriving in Vasa on February 25, 1918. He served in the White Army as a platoon leader, adjutant, and company commander. After the war, Heiskanen remained in the Finnish Defense Forces. He continued his military education at the Finnish War College and gradually advanced into more demanding positions. He was promoted to major in 1925. lieutenant colonel in 1928 and colonel in 1938. By the time Europe approached another major war, Heiskanen was an experienced professional officer. On November 30th, 1939, the Soviet Union invaded Finland. During the Winter War, Heiskanen commanded Infantry Regiment 7 on the Karelian Isthmus. His regiment fought at Suma, one of the most important sectors of the Finnish defenses. Soviet forces attempted to break the Finnish positions with artillery, tanks, and infantry. In February 1940, the Red Army launched its major offensive on the Karelian Isthmus, placing the Suma defenses under enormous pressure. Heiskanen's regiment fought there until it was withdrawn from the front line on February 13th and later, transferred toward Viipuri. The Winter War ended on March 13, 1940. After the fighting, Heiskanen received the Finnish flag lowered from the tower of Viipuri Castle before the city was surrendered to the Soviet Union. Peace lasted only a little more than a year. In the summer of 1941, Finland and the Soviet Union were again at war. This time, Colonel Heiskanen was responsible for an entire division, the 11th Division, also known as the Striking Wedge. One of its best-known formations was Infantry Regiment 8. As divisional commander, Heiskanen was responsible for thousands of men. He had to coordinate infantry, artillery, engineers, communications, and logistics while the front moved rapidly. In July 1941, the Finnish Army of Karelia began its offensive. Heiskanen's 11th Division participated in operations north and east of Lake Jänesjärvi and advanced deeper into Ladoga, Karelia. Heiskanen's command style was based on careful judgment and determination. He sought to accomplish his missions effectively without unnecessary casualties. This became an important part of the citation for his Mannerheim Cross. The 11th Division moved into the terrain north of Tuulemajärvi. Operations under Heiskanen resulted in the surprise capture of Suvilahti and Chalki. His forces then turned toward the isthmus between Saamajärvi and Sotjärvi, where they encountered strongly prepared Soviet defenses. The Finnish forces broke through the defensive line and continued their advance. They then turned south and captured Presa by surprise. The next major objective was Petrozavodsk, an important transportation and administrative center on the western shore of Lake Onega. Capturing the city required cutting the roads and railway lines leading into it. Heiskanen's 11th Division played an important role. According to his citation, the troops under his command repeatedly opened the way during the operations leading to the capture of Petrozavodsk. Despite enemy resistance, the division cut railway lines and roads, disrupting Soviet supply, movement, and withdrawal. Petrozavodsk was captured on October 1, 1941. The Finns renamed the city Enislina. Heiskanen's division had played an important role in the operations leading to its capture. Particular attention was given to the fact that significant results had been achieved with relatively low casualties. His superiors regarded this as evidence of Heiskanen's skillful leadership. On October 7, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Colonel Carlo Alexanteri Heiskanen a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, 2nd class. His knight number was 21. The citation emphasized the rapid operations around Lake Jänesjärvi, the surprise captures of Suvilahti and Chalki, the breakthrough between Saamajärvi and Sotjärvi, the capture of Presa, and the role of the 11th Division in the operations leading toward Petrozavodsk. Heiskanen's Mannerheim Cross was therefore not awarded for one dramatic individual action. It recognized his successful leadership of an entire division. He carried responsibility for thousands of soldiers, and his decisions affected both the success of the operations and the casualties suffered by his men. In 1942, Heiskanen was promoted to Major General. He continued commanding the 11th Division during the period of positional warfare. In the summer of 1944, the situation changed dramatically. The massive Soviet offensive on the Karelian Isthmus forced Finnish forces to retreat, and the 11th Division was transferred to the Isthmus. Heiskanen's troops fought in areas including Kerstala, Justila, and Ihantala. In 1941, Heiskanen had commanded an offensive eastward. Now his task was to help stop the Red Army from advancing deeper into Finland. After the defensive battles of the summer of 1944, the Soviet advance was halted. In September 1944, Finland concluded an armistice with the Soviet Union, but the war was still not over for Heiskanen's division. Finland was required to remove German forces from its territory, beginning the Lapland War. The 11th Division was transferred north. Heiskanen's troops participated in the landing at Tornio and the battles that followed against German forces. His wartime path had therefore stretched from Suma to Ladoga Karelia, Petrozavodsk, the Karelian Isthmus, and finally Lapland. After the war, Heiskanen continued serving in senior positions in the Finnish Defense Forces. He was promoted to lieutenant general in 1951 and general of infantry on June 4, 1953. That same year, he became commander of the Finnish Defense Forces. The young man who had secretly traveled to Germany as a Jaeger, almost 4 decades earlier, had risen to command. Finland's entire military establishment, Heiskanen remained commander of the Defense Forces until 1959. He was the last Finnish Jaeger to hold the position. Carlo Aleksanteri. Heiskanen died in Hämeenlinna on November 6, 1962. He was 68 years old. His military career had stretched from the battlefields of the First World War through the early years of independent Finland, the Winter War, the Continuation War, and the Lapland War. During the Winter War, he commanded Infantry Regiment 7 at Suma. During the Continuation War, he commanded the 11th Division from Ladoga Karelia toward Petrozavodsk. His troops broke defensive positions, captured important objectives, and helped open the way toward Ääneslina. On October 7, 1941, this leadership earned him the Mannerheim Cross. Later, he rose to become commander of the Finnish Defense Forces. Carlo Aleksanteri Heiskanen, Kylmä Kala. Cold. Kala Jaeger, regimental commander during the winter. War commander of the 11th Division. General of Infantry. Commander of the Finnish Defense Forces. Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 21. Number 22, Einar August Vima, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 22. Einar August Vima. His story is one of the most dramatic in this series. Vihma was a Finnish Jaeger, military educator, divisional commander, and major general. He became known for commanding unusually close to the front line. This made him highly respected by his soldiers, but it also exposed him to the same dangers they faced. In the summer of 1944 at Ihantala, this style of leadership ultimately cost him his life. Einar August Vima was born in Kuopio on September 19, 1893. His original surname was Wichman. His parents were Pastor Henrik August Wichman and Matilda Sophia Saxbeck. Vihma graduated from the Kuopio Classical Lyceum in 1912 and began studying mechanical engineering at Helsinki University of Technology. The First World War changed the direction of his life. Finland was still part of the Russian Empire, and the Finnish Jaeger movement sought military training in Germany for a possible struggle for independence. Vima joined the Royal Prussian Jägerbataillon 22 in 1915. He served in its 2nd Company and received military training in Germany. He also carried out recruitment and communications assignments in Sweden and Finland before returning to the battalion. Vima returned to Finland in late 1917 and helped train civil guard forces on the Karelian Isthmus and in Kuopio. When the Finnish Civil War began in 1918, he served with the White Army. His wartime service included operations around Kuopio, Varkaus, Mäntyharju, Heinola, Kirvu, and Viipuri. After the war, Vima remained in the Finnish Defense Forces. He served as a company and battalion commander, military instructor, and staff officer. He studied at the Finnish War College in 1925 and 1926 and qualified as a general staff officer in March 1927. Military education became an important part of his career. Vima worked in the general staff, training organization, and commanded the Finnish cadet school from 1933 until 1936. He was promoted to colonel on December 6, 1933. When the Soviet Union invaded Finland on November 30, 1939, Vihma initially commanded the 1st Brigade. At the end of December, he received command of the 7th Division on the Karelian Isthmus. The division became involved in extremely heavy fighting in the Taipale sector. Taipale was one of the most famous defensive areas of the Winter War. Soviet forces attacked repeatedly with heavy artillery and infantry support, but the Finnish positions held until the end of the conflict. The fighting was extremely costly. Vima's division suffered thousands of casualties, yet the defensive line remained intact. Vihma gained experience commanding an entire division, while his troops were under continuous pressure. The Winter War ended on March 13, 1940. During the interim peace, Vima continued serving in senior positions, including command of the Helsinki Military District. In the summer of 1941, Finland and the Soviet Union were again at war. At the beginning of the Continuation War, Colonel Vima received command of the 12th Division. It was the performance of this division that earned him the Mannerheim Cross. The 12th Division participated in the Finnish offensive on the Karelian Isthmus. Vima had used the earlier defensive period to prepare and train his troops for offensive warfare. His official citation stated that he had developed the division into an effective modern attacking force and created a strong spirit of sacrifice and determination among his soldiers. During the summer and early autumn of 1941, the division faced strongly prepared Soviet defensive positions. Vihma directed the 12th Division during the operations. Connected with the recapture of Viipuri, his troops broke through strong enemy positions and advanced in a way that threatened the withdrawal routes of major Soviet formations. According to the official citation, Vima's forces succeeded in cutting the retreat route of the enemy's main forces. This became an important element in the larger encirclement operation. The division helped maintain the encirclement while resisting Soviet attempts to break out. At the same time, Vima launched a deep pursuit with his main forces against withdrawing enemy formations. The objective was to prevent an organized Soviet retreat. These attacks scattered the remaining Soviet troops into the surrounding forests and made it difficult for them to establish a new coherent defensive line. One feature of Vima's leadership stood out above all others. He personally went close to the fighting, a divisional commander's normal. Responsibility was to remain at headquarters and control the actions of thousands of soldiers. Vihma, however, frequently moved near the front and personally observed critical situations. His official Mannerheim Cross citation emphasized this directly. It stated that Vima personally supported his subordinates wherever important events were taking place. His contribution to the success of his formations was described as considerable and sometimes decisive. The citation also emphasized his personal bravery and stated that he possessed the complete respect of his soldiers. On October 12, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Colonel Einar August Vihma a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, second class. His knight number was 22. Vima's cross therefore recognized exceptional leadership at divisional level. His troops had broken strong defensive positions, cut Soviet withdrawal routes, and played an important role in the operations around Viipuri. The citation also emphasized that these results had been achieved with comparatively limited losses. December 18, 1941, Vihma was promoted to Major General. During the next stage of the war, he received command of the 6th Division. He commanded the formation from 1941 until 1944 on the Maaselkä Isthmus and later on the Karelian Isthmus. The long period of positional warfare was very different from the offensive of 1941. Large advances ended, but training, defensive construction, and combat readiness had to be maintained continuously. In the summer of 1944, the situation changed dramatically. The Soviet Union launched its major offensive on the Karelian Isthmus on June 9th. Finnish forces were forced to retreat, and Viipuri was lost on June 20th. Vihma's 6th Division was transferred to the Karelian Isthmus to reinforce the Finnish defense. The division participated in the Battle of Tali-Ihantala, one of the largest battles ever fought in the Nordic countries. Vihma commanded in the same manner he always had. Close to the front, he moved through areas where the decisive phases of the battle were taking place. This gave him direct knowledge of the situation, but it also exposed him to enormous personal danger. By early August, The main Soviet offensive had lost much of its strength, but heavy artillery fire continued around Ihantala. On August 5, 1944, Vihma was moving through the Ihantala area with other officers while observing the situation near the front. Soviet artillery fire struck the area. Major General Einar Vihma was killed. He was 50 years. Old Vihma was one of the highest-ranking Finnish officers killed at the front during the Second World War and has been described as the only general of independent Finland to be killed in frontline combat. He was buried in the Heroes Cemetery in Kuopio. One characteristic followed Einar Vihma. Throughout his military career, he wanted to see the situation himself. He was a commander who stayed close to his soldiers and close to the battle. In 1941, this was regarded as one of his greatest strengths. He personally supported his subordinate commanders at decisive locations and earned the respect of his troops. 3 years later, that same style of leadership placed him in the Soviet artillery fire at Ihantala Einar August. Vihma Finnish Jäger Pit Divisional, commander during the Winter War, commander of the 12th Division during the Viipuri operations. Later, commander of the 6th Division, Major. General killed at Ihantala on August 5, 1944 night. Of the Mannerheim Cross, number 22. Number 23, Antti Väinö-Sakka Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 23. Antti Väinö-Sakka. The previous two knights were senior officers and divisional commanders. Antti Sakka's story takes us into a completely different world. When he became a knight of the Mannerheim Cross, he was a corporal and the leader of an anti-tank rifle squad. His task was dangerous. Sakka had to operate close to the enemy and use his anti-tank weapon in situations where the quick actions of a single soldier could determine whether an entire attack could continue. Antti Väinö-Sakka was born in Antrea on September 13, 1904. His parents were farmer Antti Sakka and Maria Talia. Sakka attended elementary school and completed his military service in Coastal Artillery Regiment 2 in 1924 and 1925. He later studied subjects connected with the cooperative and agricultural trade. In civilian life, Sakka built a long career in commerce. He worked for cooperative stores in several parts of Finland. The military was therefore not his profession. He was, however, active in the Finnish Civil Guard in several localities, giving him military training and experience before the Second World War. Sakka's first involvement in Finnish warfare actually came when he was very young. During the War of 1918, he served as a volunteer messenger on the Antrea front. When the Winter War began on November 30, 1939, Sakka was 35 years old. He initially served as a gun layer in a heavy anti-aircraft machine gun unit and later performed air surveillance duties. His wartime service included Oulu. The Winter War ended on March 13, 1940, and Sakka was released from active service in April. Peace did not last. In the summer of 1941, the Continuation War began. Sakka was assigned to Infantry Regiment 50, and his role was now very different from his duties during the Winter War. He became the leader of an anti-tank rifle squad. An anti-tank rifle was a heavy weapon designed to engage armored vehicles. In 1941, it could still be effective against lightly armored targets, but using one required courage. The gunner had to get close enough to the target. At the same time, enemy tanks, infantry, and other weapons could return fire. The first action specifically mentioned in Sakka's Mannerheim Cross citation took place at Jutulampi on July 13, 1941. A Finnish battalion was attacking. But enemy vehicles and a tank guarding the road were obstructing the advance. Sakka went into action with his anti-tank rifle. According to his citation, he destroyed several enemy trucks and one tank that was guarding the road. His action opened the way for the battalion's attack. This demonstrates the importance of the anti-tank soldier's role. It was not simply a matter of destroying one enemy vehicle. Once the tank blocking the road had been eliminated, an entire Finnish formation could continue its advance. Jutulampi was not Sakka's only notable action. The Finnish offensive continued rapidly through Ladoga, Karelia, and later toward East Karelia. Sakka's wartime route included Ignoila, Hautavaara, Suvilahti, Kurmoila, Jessoila, Alekka, Kinnasvaara, Prääsä, Matrossa, Polovina, and Petrozavodsk. During these battles, an anti-tank rifle could also be used against targets other than tanks. Its powerful projectile could, under suitable conditions, be used against enemy firing positions, vehicles, and protected targets. Saka's citation describes several situations in which his initiative and courage assisted the advance of Finnish troops. He did not simply wait for a target to appear in front of him. Saka moved actively on the battlefield and searched for positions from which he could engage the enemy. This was dangerous. An anti-tank rifle was a large and heavy weapon. Moving rapidly with it through forests or under enemy fire was difficult. Anti-tank. Soldiers also frequently had to operate close to the front line. Saka demonstrated an ability to use his weapon according to the situation. When an enemy vehicle blocked the advance, he engaged the vehicle. When an enemy position prevented Finnish infantry from moving forward, he attempted to eliminate the position. In this way, a small anti-tank rifle squad could have an important effect on the advance of a much larger infantry formation. Saka participated in battles where Soviet resistance was determined and Finnish troops had to advance from one defended position to another. The Finnish offensive of 1941 was not simply a rapid march eastward. In many places, the Red Army defended prepared positions, forcing Finnish troops to break through using infantry, artillery, and supporting weapons. Together, anti-tank soldiers formed one part of this system. Saka's personal actions nevertheless stood out, strongly enough for his commanders to recommend him for the Mannerheim Cross. The recommendation emphasized his courage, initiative, and the effect his actions had on the advance of other Finnish troops. At this point, Saka was still only a corporal. His case therefore demonstrates one of the central principles of the Mannerheim Cross. The decoration could be awarded regardless of military rank. What mattered was what the soldier had done. On October 12, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Corporal Antti Väinö Soka a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, second class. His knight number was 23. At the time, Saka was the leader of an anti-tank rifle squad in Infantry Regiment 50. His war did not end with the decoration. Saka continued serving and later received greater responsibilities. He attended reserve officer school during 1941 and 1942. In 1942, he served as the leader of an anti-tank rifle platoon. He was later released from active service. But in the summer of 1944, Finland's military situation changed dramatically. The Soviet Union launched its major offensive on the Karelian Isthmus in June 1944, forcing Finland to mobilize every available resource. Saka returned to service. He served in several duties, including as a junior officer, an anti-tank gun platoon leader, and later commander of an anti-tank gun company. This illustrates the development of his military career. In 1941, he had been a corporal leading a small anti-tank rifle squad. Later in the war, he commanded larger anti-tank formations. His wartime service continued through the later stages of the continuation war. After the war, Saka returned to civilian life. He continued working in commerce and business. His positions included cooperative store manager, purchasing manager, wholesale salesman, and commercial representative. Saka was promoted to second lieutenant on February 15, 1942, and lieutenant on October 19, 1944. He died in Jyväskylä on August 11, 1972. He was 67 years old. Antti Saka was buried at the old cemetery in Datin. Jyväskylä. Saka's story is not about commanding divisions or regiments. He did not receive the Mannerheim Cross for directing thousands of soldiers. His story is about a soldier in a small unit whose job required him to move close enough to the enemy to use a heavy weapon at exactly the right place and time. At Judolampi on July 13, 1941, the situation was clear. The Finnish advance was blocked. Enemy vehicles and a tank were preventing the battalion from moving forward. Corporal Saka brought his anti-tank rifle into action. Several trucks were destroyed. The tank guarding the road was destroyed, and the battalion's attack could continue. Saka demonstrated in later battles that this was not simply one successful shot or a matter of chance. He repeatedly showed courage, initiative, and the ability to use his weapon effectively on the battlefield. That is why his name was added to the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross Antivaine, Saka, civilian worker in commerce. Veteran of the Winter War, anti-tank soldier, squad leader. Later a Lieutenant Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 23. Number 24, Tauno Toivo Savolainen Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 24. Tauno Toivo Savolainen. His story demonstrates exceptionally well that the Mannerheim Cross did not require high military rank. When Savolainen received the decoration, he was a corporal and combat messenger. His job was to carry messages across the battlefield, often through enemy fire and areas where the front lines were unclear. Tauno Toivo Savolainen was born in Valkjärvi on December 16, 1913. His parents were farmer Giuseppe Savolainen and Hedvig, known as Heti, Sotku. Savolainen attended elementary school and worked as a farmer on his family's farm in Valkjärvi before the wars. He completed his compulsory military service in Bicycle Battalion 2 in 1935. In 1936, he participated in 20 days of refresher training. Savolainen was also a member of the Valkjärvi Civil Guard from 1937 until 1940. When the Soviet Union invaded Finland on November 30, 1939, the Winter War began. Savolainen served in separate Battalion 5 as a communications soldier in a mortar platoon. His Winter War service included Pampala, Sarkola, Muola, Pasuri, Kuparsari, and Salmenkaita. The work of a communications soldier was essential. Before modern digital communications, military command depended on field telephones, radios, and messages physically carried between positions. When communications were destroyed by artillery fire, soldiers had to maintain contact under extremely dangerous conditions. Savolainen was promoted to corporal on January 10, 1940. The Winter War ended on March 13, 1940. Savolainen remained in service for a period and was released from active duty on May 25th. After the Winter War, he did not simply return to farming. Savolainen worked as a surveyor on the construction of the Salpa Line at Luumäki during 1940 and 1941. The Salpa Line was a massive defensive system constructed along Finland's eastern frontier to strengthen the country's defenses against another possible Soviet invasion. In the summer of 1941, war began again. During the Continuation War, Savolainen was assigned to Infantry Regiment 3. He served as a combat messenger in the regiment's headquarters company. The task could sound simple: carry a message from one location to another. In reality, it could be extremely dangerous. Telephone lines could be destroyed by artillery. Radio equipment was not available everywhere and could not always be relied upon. When communications failed, orders and information sometimes had to be carried personally. A messenger could move through terrain where the exact location of the enemy was unknown. An enemy patrol could suddenly appear from the forest. The actions that eventually earned Savolainen the Mannerheim Cross occurred in August 1941. The first took place during the Battle of Camera on August 25th. Savolainen had been carrying a message and was returning to his platoon when he was surprised by a strong enemy patrol. The situation was extremely dangerous. Savolainen was alone. Several enemy soldiers were facing him. The political officer of the Soviet patrol ordered his men to fire and also fired at Savolainen. Savolainen reacted faster and more accurately. He returned fire. Several enemy soldiers were killed and the remaining men surrendered. The situation then took another unusual turn. The prisoners apparently did not initially realize how few Finnish soldiers were facing them. When they discovered that Savolainen was alone, they attempted to escape. Savolainen prevented them from getting away. A single Finnish corporal had therefore been surprised by a strong enemy patrol, survived the firefight, and captured the remaining enemy soldiers. Only 6 days later, another remarkable incident occurred. It was later included in the official citation for his Mannerheim Cross. On August 31, 1941, Savolainen was returning from Herkö toward Karhula. During the journey, he again encountered numerous enemy soldiers. Once again, Savolainen found himself facing several opponents. He fought. According to his official citation, Savolainen killed some of the enemy soldiers and captured others. This was no longer simply one extraordinary incident. Within 6 days, Savolainen had twice encountered groups of enemy soldiers and survived both situations. The first occurred while he was performing messenger duties during the fighting at Kämärä. The second occurred while he was returning from Herkö to Karhula. In both situations, Savolainen demonstrated an ability to act rapidly without immediate support from his own troops. His actions were noticed by senior commanders. The Mannerheim Cross had been established in 1941 to recognize exceptional bravery, extremely important achievements in combat, or exceptionally distinguished command of military operations. Military rank was not decisive. Savolainen was an excellent example. He was not an officer. He did not command a battalion, regiment, or division. He was a corporal and combat messenger. Yet his personal actions were considered significant enough to place him among the recipients of Finland's most prestigious wartime military decoration. On October 12, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Corporal Tauno Toivo Savolainen a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, 2nd class. His knight number was 24. The official citation specifically emphasized Savolainen's actions on August 25th and August 31st, 1941. Receiving the cross did not end his military service. Savolainen continued serving as a combat messenger in Infantry Regiment 3 during 1941 and 1942. He later served in the 3rd Brigade from 1942 until 1943. His continuation war service included Muurikkala, Nuijamaa, Kämärä, Pienpero, Porlampi, Koivisto, Rajajoki, and Krivi. Savolainen was promoted to Lance Corporal on November 14, 1942. In 1943, his duties changed. He had already worked as a surveyor during the construction of the Salpa line before the Continuation War. This professional experience now became useful again. From 1943 until 1944, Savolainen served as a surveyor in the Land Acquisition Office of Finnish Headquarters Fortification Organization. The war years had completely transformed the life of the young farmer from Valkjärvi. He had experienced the Winter War, served as a communications soldier in a mortar platoon, worked on the Salpa line, served as a combat messenger during the Continuation War, fought enemy patrols while alone, and received the Mannerheim Cross. Savolainen survived the frontline battles, but his life ended before Finland's war was over. Tauno Toivo Savolainen died at Luumäki on September 1, 1944. He was only 30 years old. His death came only days before hostilities between Finland and the Soviet Union ended in early September 1944. Savolainen was buried in the Heroes' Cemetery at Jämsä. His story is one of the clearest examples in the history of the Mannerheim Cross of how the decoration could be awarded regardless of military rank. Savolainen was not a professional soldier. Before the war, he was a farmer. Later, he worked as a surveyor. At the front, he served as a communications soldier and combat messenger, but at Kämärä on August 25, 1941, he suddenly found himself completely alone. A strong enemy patrol surprised him. The political officer ordered his men to fire. Savolainen fired back. Some of the enemy soldiers were killed. The others surrendered. And when the prisoners attempted to escape after realizing that only one Finnish soldier was guarding them, Savolainen stopped them. 6 days later, he encountered another group of enemy soldiers. Again, he fought. Again, some were killed, and others were captured. These 2 incidents were recorded in the official citation for his Mannerheim Cross. On October 12, 1941, Corporal Tauno Toivo Savolainen became a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross. Tauno Toivo Savolainen. farmer from Valkjärvi. Winter War Communications Soldier, surveyor on the Salpa Line, continuation war combat messenger. Corporal. Later Lance Corporal, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 24. Number 25, Valdemar Kosonen, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 25. Valdemar Kosonen's story is one of the most intense among the early Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. He was not a professional soldier or senior officer. In civilian life, he was a worker. At the front, he served as an observer in a mortar fire control team. But in battle, he repeatedly went far beyond the normal responsibilities of that position. Valdemar Kosonen was born in Nui Jamaa on March 5, 1916. His parents were Juho Kosonen and Ida Hakanen. Kosonen attended elementary school and completed his compulsory military service in coastal artillery. Regiment 2 from 1937 to 1938, when the Soviet Union invaded Finland on November 30, 1939, Kosonen went to war. During the Winter War, he served as an ammunition handler at the Saarenpää coastal fortress. His wartime service also included Heinlahti, Vatnuori, and Taikarsari. The Winter War ended on March 13, 1940. Kosonen remained in military service for a short period and was released on May 14. Peace lasted only a little more than a year. In the summer of 1941, Finland and the Soviet Union were again at war. During the Continuation War, Kosonen was assigned to Infantry Regiment 15. He served as an observer in the fire control team of a mortar platoon. The observer's job was extremely important. Mortars could fire at targets that their crews could not see directly. Forward observers, therefore, had to locate enemy positions and help direct the mortar fire accurately. This often required operating close to the front line. Kosonen, however, did much more than observe the enemy. His official Mannerheim Cross citation describes a soldier who repeatedly volunteered for dangerous missions that brought him extremely close to Soviet positions. One of his most important actions occurred in the Kokkolanjoki area. The Finnish advance had stopped. Enemy defenses were preventing the Finnish troops from moving forward. Kosonen decided to act on his own initiative. He advanced against an enemy position carrying hand grenades and satchel charges. A satchel charge was a powerful explosive device used by Finnish soldiers against tanks, bunkers, and other strong targets. Using one required getting dangerously close. Kosonen attacked a defended enemy position and a dugout filled with Soviet soldiers. Using grenades and explosive charges, he destroyed both positions. From the same location, he shot an enemy sniper and wounded a fire control officer. This was far beyond the normal role of a mortar observer. Kosonen had gone from observing the battlefield to personally attacking enemy strong points. But his actions did not end there. An enemy tank had penetrated the Finnish positions. For infantry, this represented an extremely serious threat. In 1941, Finnish forces did not always possess enough effective anti-tank weapons. Soldiers sometimes had to destroy tanks at close range, using explosive charges. Kosonen volunteered to deal with the tank. This meant approaching the armored vehicle at extremely close range. Kosonen succeeded in stopping it. The tank was then destroyed with explosive charges. The effect went far beyond the destruction of a single vehicle. According to his official citation, Kosonen's actions increased the fighting spirit of the entire battalion. At the beginning of the resulting battle, 5 enemy tanks were destroyed. Kosonen had demonstrated that the Soviet armor could be stopped. Immediately afterward, he volunteered for another mission. This time, the objective was a building at Tiorala that was being used by enemy forces. Finnish troops had to capture it. Kosonen volunteered to guide the attacking force. The position was captured using flamethrowers and explosive charges, yet the incidents described in his citation still did not end there. During later fighting, Kosonen was carrying out a reconnaissance mission. Reconnaissance could require soldiers to move very close to enemy positions. Kosonen suddenly found himself face-to-face with 4 Soviet soldiers. One was a political officer, the other 3 were second lieutenants. The encounter developed instantly into combat. Kosonen was alone. He managed to eliminate the 3 second lieutenants, but then his weapon ran out of ammunition. The Soviet political officer continued firing at him. Kosonen rushed into another ditch for cover while bullets were being fired in his direction. Inside the ditch, he managed to reload his pistol. The fight continued. The political officer was also killed. This incident was later included in Kosonen's official Mannerheim Cross citation as an example of his courage, skill, and initiative. The same pattern appeared repeatedly in his actions. Kosonen did not wait for someone else to perform a dangerous mission. When an enemy strongpoint blocked the advance, he attacked it. When a Soviet tank penetrated Finnish positions, he volunteered to stop it. When an important building had to be captured, he volunteered as a guide, and when he unexpectedly encountered 4 enemy soldiers during reconnaissance, he fought his way out of the situation. His actions were noticed. On October 16, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Valdemar Kosonen a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, 2nd class. His knight number was 25. According to the official register of the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross, Kosonen was then a lance corporal, serving as an observer in a mortar fire control team of Infantry Regiment 15. He had been promoted to corporal during 1941 and to lance corporal on October 11th, only 5 days before becoming a knight. His official citation clearly explains why. Kosonen was selected. His duty was not to command thousands of soldiers. He did not plan major operations from a headquarters. His actions took place only meters from the enemy, with hand grenades, with explosive charges, with a pistol, and above all, through personal courage. Kosonen's continuation war service included Kangaskoski, Kaitsansalo, Enkilansalo, Tiurala, and Viisjoki. His war continued after receiving the Mannerheim Cross, but Kosonen's life was short. In the spring of 1942, he was hospitalized. Valdemar Kosonen died at the 13th Military Hospital in Viipuri on April 22, 1942. He was only 26 years old. Kosonen was buried in the Heroes Cemetery at Johannes. His military career had been brief but remarkable. In 1939, he had entered the Winter War as an ordinary Finnish reservist. He served as an ammunition handler at Saarenpää. During the Continuation War, he became a mortar observer. But his name entered Finnish military history because of what he did beyond his assigned duties. When the advance in the Kokkolanjoki area stopped, Kosonen moved forward carrying grenades and explosive charges. He destroyed an enemy strongpoint and dugout. He shot a sniper. He wounded a fire control officer. When an enemy tank penetrated Finnish positions, Kosonen volunteered to help destroy it. The tank was stopped and destroyed. When a volunteer was needed to guide the attack at Tiurala, Kosonen stepped forward. And when he encountered a political officer and 3 second lieutenants during reconnaissance, he survived the fight. These were not the actions of a commander directing a major operation. They were the actions of an individual frontline soldier. That is why Valdemar Kosonen's story demonstrates so clearly what the Mannerheim Cross represented. Military rank was not decisive. Actions on the battlefield were Valdemar Kosonen, worker from Nuijama Winter War Ammunition, handler, Continuation War Mortar Observer, volunteer. For dangerous missions, Lance Corporal. Dead at only 26 years of age, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 25. Number 26, Matti Varstalak, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 26. Matti Varstala's story is about a remarkably young officer who was forced to carry enormous responsibility from the opening weeks of the Continuation War. When he became a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross in October 1941, he was only 21 years old, a second lieutenant commanding a Jaeger platoon. Matti Varstala was born in Vasa on October 31, 1919. His original surname was Wilman. His parents were sales manager Vaino Ilmari Wilman and Esther Laakso. As a young man, Varstala belonged to the Civil Guard, organizations in Vasa and Kristiinankaupunki. From 1936 until 1940, he was also a member of the Vasan Metsäveikot scout troop and received a second-class Mannerheim Cross for his scouting achievements. In 1937, Varstala graduated from the Kristiina co-educational school in 1940, when the Winter War began on November 30th, 1939. He was still a student rather than a frontline soldier. Nevertheless, as a member of the Civil Guard, he participated in air surveillance and anti-aircraft duties in Vasa. The Winter War ended on March 13, 1940. Varstala then continued his military training. He served in bicycle and Jaeger formations and completed Reserve Officer Course number 50 in 1940 and 1941. He also began Cadet Course number 26. The outbreak of the continuation war in the summer of 1941 interrupted his peacetime training. On June 28, 1941, Varstala was promoted to second lieutenant. He received command of a Jaeger platoon in the 3rd Battalion of Infantry Regiment 47. For the young officer, this meant immediate responsibility for soldiers in actual combat. Varstala's platoon participated in the Finnish offensive on the Karelian Isthmus. His wartime route included Kontu, Sidenmaa, Kamara, Laipasuo, Suma, Munasuo, Kaukjärvi, Vamilsuu, Ino, Rajajoki, and Valkeasaari. Even before the main offensive operations, Varstala demonstrated exceptional activity. According to his official Mannerheim Cross citation, he personally commanded dozens of patrols during positional fighting. These patrols provided valuable information about Soviet positions and activity. Patrolling was dangerous. Small groups moved close to enemy lines and sometimes directly between enemy positions. One mistake could result in an entire patrol being surrounded or destroyed. Varstala's patrols did more than gather information. During one mission, he led a 5-man patrol that destroyed an enemy machine gun strongpoint with explosive charges. Using a satchel charge required approaching extremely close to the target. A machine gun position was also one of the most dangerous obstacles infantry could face because its fire could stop an entire attacking formation. In another incident, Varstala advanced on his own initiative with only his combat messenger into a forested isthmus held by Soviet troops. His action enabled his battalion to reach its first objective without suffering casualties. This demonstrated a characteristic that would repeatedly appear in Varstala's later actions. He did not wait for someone else to solve the problem. When the advance stopped, he attempted to find a way forward himself. On August 26, 1941, Varstala led his platoon in an attack. His men broke through the enemy defenses. This opened a route for the entire battalion into the rear of the Soviet positions. In such circumstances, the success of a single platoon could influence a much larger battle. Once a gap had been created in the defensive line, larger Finnish formations could exploit it and continue the offensive. Only 5 days later, Varstala again found himself in a critical situation. On August 31st, his battalion was breaking through toward a road in the Ino area. Soviet forces launched a counterattack. An enemy vehicle column attempted to break through the Finnish positions. Varstala opened accurate fire with his submachine gun. According to the official citation, his actions had a decisive effect on stopping the Soviet counterattack. He halted the vehicle column and personally killed dozens of enemy soldiers. Participating in the attack, Varstala was fighting directly at the front. He did not simply issue orders. He personally used his weapon and participated in stopping the breakthrough. In September 1941, his platoon entered another series of important battles. On September 10th, Varstala was ordered to capture an important railway station at Valkeasaari. He led his platoon into the attack. A strong Soviet force defended the position. The Finns drove the enemy away. Most remarkably, Varstala's platoon captured the railway station without suffering casualties. Only 3 days later, the situation changed again. On September 13th, Soviet forces had recaptured the station. This time, Varstala was commanding a company. His mission was to take the lost position back. The opposing Soviet force was extremely strong. According to the official citation, it consisted of more than 600 men. Varstala led the attack. The Finnish soldiers recaptured the railway station. The Soviet force of more than 600 men was driven away and suffered significant casualties. Varstala was still only a second lieutenant. Yet in this battle, he was effectively commanding a company against a much larger enemy formation. On the following day, September 14th, fighting continued. A Soviet battalion attacked the Finnish positions. Varstala played a decisive role in stopping the assault. Then came another crisis on September 20. The enemy launched a major attack with forces almost the strength of an entire regiment. The attack was preceded by heavy artillery preparation. Several tanks supported the Soviet infantry. The enemy succeeded in penetrating the Finnish positions. Varstala was again in the middle of the crisis. He was serving as the commander of a frontline company. The defensive line had to be reorganized while the Soviet forces maintained intense pressure. Varstala took control. According to the official citation, he acted with exceptional skill and encouraged his men through his own personal courage. This perhaps explains better than anything why such a young officer became a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross. In the summer of 1941, Varstala had only just received the rank of second lieutenant. Within a few months, he had commanded dozens of patrols, destroyed a machine gun position, led a breakthrough, and stopped counterattacks. He had captured an important railway station without casualties. He had later led a company against an enemy formation of more than 600 men, and he had reorganized frontline defenses during an attack involving almost an entire Soviet regiment. His actions were quickly recognized. On October 16, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Second Lieutenant Matti Varstala a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross. Second class, his knight number was 26. Varstala was still only 21 years old. He would turn 22 at the end of that month. Receiving the Mannerheim Cross did not end his war. Varstala continued serving with Infantry Regiment 47 until 1942. On May 31, 1942, he was promoted to lieutenant. He later returned to cadet school and completed the studies that had been interrupted by the war. In 1943, Varstala served as a platoon commander and training officer at Infantry Training Center 23. In the summer of 1944, Finland again faced a critical situation. The Soviet Union launched its major offensive on the Karelian Isthmus on June 9. Varstala returned to frontline service. He served with Infantry Regiment 48 as an adjutant and later as a platoon commander. His wartime route once again led into the battles of the Karelian Isthmus, Valkeasaari, Suursaari, Ruostekanava, Kisselinsuo, and finally Konkkala on June 25, 1944. Matti Varstala was killed in action at Konkkala. He was only 24 years old. Less than 3 years had passed since he received the Mannerheim Cross. Varstala was buried in the Heroes' Cemetery in Vasa. His life had been remarkably short, but during his military career, he experienced more than many officers far older than him. During the Winter War, he had served in air surveillance and anti-aircraft duties in Vasa. At the beginning of the Continuation War, he became a second lieutenant and platoon commander. At 21, he commanded patrols into enemy-held territory, destroyed a machine gun strongpoint, led a breakthrough, stopped a counterattack with his submachine gun, captured an important railway station, recaptured it from a much stronger Soviet force, and commanded frontline defenses during an attack approaching regimental strength on October 16, 1941. These actions earned him the Mannerheim Cross. Less than 3 years later, he was killed on the Karelian Isthmus. Matti Varstala, formerly Matti Willman, Scout, from Vasa Winter War Air Surveillance. Soldier Continuation, Warjäger Platoon Commander 2nd. Lieutenant, later Lieutenant, killed at Konkkala on June 25, 1944, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 26. Number 27, Ati Haino, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 27. Ahti Heino. His story is one of the shortest and most tragic among the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. When Ahti Heino received the decoration in October 1941, he was only 20 years old and still held the rank of private. He was not an officer or even a non-commissioned officer. He was a submachine gunner in his company's assault group. Known for repeatedly being among the first men to attack, Ahti Heino was born in Koivisto on September 20th, 1921. His parents were farmer, Reinhold Heino and Selma Sylvia Sweeky. Heino attended elementary school. His civilian background was connected with farming, and he later worked on a farm in Kiruna. His generation, however, was drawn into war at an extremely young age. When the Winter War began in November 1939, Heino was only 18. His main frontline military service came later, and in 1941 he served in the 5th Brigade. In the summer of 1941, the continuation war began between Finland and the Soviet Union. Heino was assigned to Infantry Regiment 5. He served as a submachine gunner in the regiment's 5th Company. The submachine gunner had an important role in Finnish offensive tactics. The Suomi submachine gun provided enormous firepower at short range, but using it effectively often meant moving dangerously close to the enemy. Heino served in his company's assault group. His place was therefore wherever. The enemy defenses had to be broken. His official Mannerheim Cross citation stated that from the beginning of the war, Heino had served as the submachine gunner of his company's assault group. It also emphasized the defining characteristic of his actions. During the company's attacks, Heino was repeatedly the first to engage the enemy. He did not wait for others to decide the battle. When the attack began, Heino moved forward. His wartime route included Pukalusjärvi, Ukkojärvi Kananoja Jessoila Villavaara, Petrozavodsk, and later Krivi. During the Finnish offensive of 1941, Soviet forces defended roads, villages, forested areas, and other important terrain. Machine guns, artillery, and prepared defensive positions could stop an attacking formation, breaking. Such resistance required soldiers willing to continue advancing under enemy fire. Heino proved to be one of them. On August 26, 1941, one of the actions later recorded in his official citation took place. Heino's company attacked a Soviet howitzer battery in the Tali area, an artillery battery was a dangerous objective. If the enemy guns remained operational, they could inflict heavy casualties on Finnish troops. Capturing them required attacking directly into defended positions. Heino was again at the front of the assault. According to his official citation, he played a decisive role in destroying the enemy resistance. The young private had not merely participated, his personal actions were specifically identified as one of the reasons the enemy position was overcome. The fighting continued. By September, Finnish forces were advancing farther into East Karelia. On September 24, 1941, Heino's company was in defensive positions around Villavaara. Nearby, another Finnish battalion was attempting to eliminate an encircled enemy force. Heino was not part of that attacking unit. He could have remained in his own company's positions. Instead, he made another decision. He joined the attack on his own initiative. The situation soon became critical. The assault began losing momentum. The Finnish advance was close to stopping. At that moment, Heino moved forward. With his submachine gun in his hands, he attacked first. Other soldiers followed. According to the official citation, at the decisive moment, his example pulled the soldiers of another battalion forward and helped turn the attack into a successful conclusion. This reveals something remarkable about Heino. He was still only a private. He possessed no officer's insignia. His rank gave him no authority to command the soldiers of another battalion. Yet when he attacked, they followed. It was leadership without formal command, leadership by personal example. The attack succeeded. But Heino paid a heavy price. He was seriously wounded. During the fighting at Villavaara, his wound removed him from frontline service, and he was taken to a military hospital at Harjavalta. There, the young soldier soon learned that his actions had been recognized at the highest level of the Finnish army. On October 19, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Private Adi Heino a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, second class. His knight number was 27. Heino had only recently turned 20. His citation particularly emphasized his repeated position at the front of his company's attacks. The action at Tali on August 26 and the fighting at Villavara on September 24. At Tali, he had played a decisive role in destroying enemy resistance. At Villavara, he had voluntarily joined another Finnish formation's attack and, through his own example, helped restart an assault that was losing momentum. It was also at Villavara that he had been seriously wounded. Heino received his Mannerheim Cross while recovering in hospital. He had already done more than most soldiers would experience in an entire war. He was 20 years old. He had participated in repeated attacks. He had constantly fought among the first men forward, had been seriously wounded, and he had become a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross. But after recovering, Heino returned to the front. On January 10, 1942, he was promoted to corporal. The war had now moved into positional fighting on the Maselka Isthmus. One of the important areas was Krivi. There, Ati Heino's story ended only a few months after he became a knight. On January 14, 1942, Finnish artillery was firing in the area. Several shells fell short. They landed among Finnish positions. One of them killed Ati Heino. He had returned to the front after recovering from his wounds and had held the rank of corporal for only a few days. He was 20 years old. Less than 3 months had passed since he received the Mannerheim Cross. Heino was therefore killed by accidental friendly artillery fire. The company war diary recorded that Finnish artillery shells had struck their own positions that morning and that Mannerheim Cross Knight Corporal Ati Heino had been killed. He was buried in the Heroes Cemetery at Koivisto. Ati Heino became the youngest knight of the Mannerheim Cross to be killed in the war. His story was remarkably short, but a great deal happened during that brief period. In the summer of 1941, he was a young private in Infantry Regiment 5. His role was to serve as the submachine gunner of his company's assault group. On August 26 at Tali, he attacked an enemy howitzer battery. His actions played a decisive role in destroying the enemy resistance. On September 21 at Villavara, he saw another Finnish battalion's attack beginning to fail. He did not wait for orders. He joined the assault. With his submachine gun in his hands, he went forward first. Others followed. The attack regained momentum and ended successfully. Heino was seriously wounded. On October 19th, he became a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross. After recovering, he returned to the front, and on January 14, 1942, he was killed at Krivi by accidental Finnish artillery fire. His military career lasted only a short time, but his official citation left behind the image of a soldier who did not wait. For others, when the moment to attack arrived, he went first. Ati Heino, farmer's son from Koivisto. Submachine gunner of Infantry Regiment 5. Assault Group soldier. Private, later. Corporal. Seriously wounded at Villavara, returned to the front, killed at Krivi at only 20 years of age. Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 27. Number 28. Torsten Erik Einar Korkinen, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 28. Torsten Erik Einar Korkinen. Korkinen's story is another example of a young Finnish reserve officer who was forced to lead soldiers directly at the front during the offensive phase of the Continuation War. When he became a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross in October 1941, he was a second lieutenant and company commander in Light Detachment 14. Torsten Erik Einar Korkinen was born in Nakila in October 1912. His father was farmer Evert Einari Korkinen and his mother Anna Eriksson. Korkinen attended school in Hämeenlinna and later received reserve officer training. His civilian background was connected with agriculture, but like many other knights in this series, the war changed the direction of his life. During the Winter War, Korkinen served in the Finnish army and gained his first experience of real combat. When the Continuation War began in the summer of 1941, He served initially in Light Detachment 14 and later in formations including Infantry Regiment 25. The actions leading to his Mannerheim Cross were especially connected with the fighting during the summer and autumn of 1941. Finnish light detachments were mobile formations. Their tasks included reconnaissance, protecting the advance, and rapidly exploiting gaps in Soviet defenses. Commanding such a formation required quick decisions. The situation could change within minutes. The exact location of enemy positions was not always known. A company commander had to decide when to attack, when to bypass resistance, and when to wait for support. Korkkonen became known as an active and courageous leader. He did not command his attacks from far behind the front. As a young second lieutenant, he often remained close to the soldiers he was leading. During the summer of 1941, Finnish forces advanced across the Karelian Isthmus toward territories lost after the Winter War. In many areas, Soviet resistance was strong. Roads had been mined, bridges destroyed, machine guns and anti-tank weapons protected important routes. The advance was not simply a rapid march. Every road, village, and important section of terrain could become a battlefield. Korkkonen's company encountered these conditions repeatedly. He demonstrated initiative and the ability to use a small mobile force effectively. When enemy resistance stopped the advance, Korkkonen attempted to find another solution. Sometimes this meant moving around the enemy position. Sometimes it meant attacking rapidly before Soviet troops had time to organize their defenses. This type of leadership made Finnish light formations dangerous opponents. Korkkonen's actions were noticed by senior commanders. His leadership demonstrated both personal courage and tactical ability. The young officer was able to keep his soldiers, moving even when enemy resistance attempted to stop the advance. The early knights of the Mannerheim Cross came from very different military backgrounds. Generals, divisional commanders, corporals, privates, and young second lieutenants. Korkkonen belonged to the last group. His military rank was junior, but his responsibility was significant. As a company commander, he was responsible for dozens and sometimes more than 100 soldiers. A wrong decision could immediately result in dead and wounded men. A correct decision could allow a small formation to open the route for a much larger force. During the 1941 offensive, Korkkonen repeatedly demonstrated an ability to make such decisions. His actions were valued, especially because he remained personally involved in dangerous situations. When his company came under fire, Korkkonen remained close to the front. When the advance required a rapid decision, he made it. When an attack began, he personally directed it. This style of command was effective, but dangerous. Young Finnish officers suffered heavy casualties during the Continuation War precisely because platoon and company commanders frequently fought alongside their soldiers. Korkkonen's service eventually resulted in a recommendation for one of Finland's highest military decorations. On October 19, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Second Lieutenant Torsten Erik Einar Korkkonen a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, second class. His knight number was 28. He received the decoration on the same date as Ahti Heino and Arvo Pentti. At the time of his appointment, Korkkonen commanded the 2nd Company of Light Detachment 14. For a young reserve officer, the Mannerheim Cross was an exceptional distinction, but receiving it did not end his war. Korkkonen continued serving. His later formations included Infantry Regiment 25, the Jäger Company of the 4th Division, and Infantry Regiment 12. His surviving service records show a career across several frontline formations. Content reference, OASIT. Index 4. Korkkonen also advanced in military rank. He was later promoted to lieutenant. After the war, he remained involved in reserve officer activities and belonged to the Hyvinkää Reserve Officers Club. In the reserve, he eventually reached the rank of major. Content reference, OICT. Index UA5. Korkkonen survived the war. This distinguishes his story from several other young knights appointed during the same period. Knight number 27, Ahti Heino, for example, was killed only months after receiving his cross. Korkinen returned to civilian life and lived for more than 2 decades after the war. Torsten Korkinen died in 1969. He was 56 years old. The Mannerheim Cross represented only a few years of his young life, but those years permanently connected his name with Finnish military history. Korkinen's story is not defined by one single dramatic incident. It is above all a story of leadership. A young second lieutenant commanded a mobile formation during a rapidly changing offensive. He had to make decisions with limited information, lead his soldiers personally, and continue operating while enemy fire attempted to stop the advance. His story therefore illustrates the role of young reserve officers in Finland's wars. They could have little experience and still be responsible for dozens or hundreds of lives. They had to lead attacks, accept responsibility for failure, and make decisions when there was no time to ask higher headquarters what to do. Torsten Erik Einar Korkinen was one of them. Second lieutenant, company commander, officer of Light Detachment 14. Later, Lieutenant and Reserve Major. A Knight of the Mannerheim Cross who survived the war. Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 28. Number 29. Arvo Veikko Pentti Knight of the Mannerheim Cross number 29. Arvo Veikko Pentti's story combines 2 very different forms of warfare. He was both a courageous patrol officer and commander of an anti-tank gun company. His official citation describes a man who voluntarily operated behind enemy lines and later directed anti-tank defenses when heavy Soviet tanks threatened Finnish positions. Arvo Veikko Pentti was born in Hämeenkyrö on February 13, 1915. His parents were Eero Pentti and Elsa Maria Olila Pentti. Attended school in Kankaanpää and later studied at Rauma Commercial College and Liepaa Agricultural College. His civilian future appeared connected with agriculture and business, but military training was also an important part of his youth. Pentti belonged to the Civil Guard, organizations in Hämeenkyrö and Tervanto from 1930 until 1941. He completed compulsory military service with artillery forces in 1937 and 1938 and attended Reserve Officer Course number 37 in 1937. On May 16, 1938, he was promoted to Reserve Second Lieutenant. When the Soviet Union invaded Finland on November 30, 1939, the Winter War began. Pentti served with Infantry Regiment 7 as a junior officer and later as a company commander. His wartime route took him into the heavy fighting at Suma and Viipuri. At Suma, Finnish forces repeatedly faced Soviet attacks supported by tanks and artillery. Pentti gained his first experience of large-scale battle and frontline command there. During the final phase of the Winter War, fighting moved toward Viipuri. On March 8, 1940, Pentti was wounded at Viipuri. Only 5 days later, on March 13th, the Winter War ended. Pentti was promoted to Reserve Lieutenant the following day. Peace was brief. In the summer of 1941, Finland and the Soviet Union were again at war. At the beginning of the Continuation War, Lieutenant Arvo Pentti received an important position in Infantry Regiment 44. He became commander of its anti-tank gun. Company anti-tank defense was extremely important to the Finnish Army. The Soviet Union possessed far more tanks and armored vehicles. If enemy armor broke through infantry positions, without effective resistance, the consequences could be severe. Pentti commanded a formation whose task was to stop those tanks, but according to his citation, he did far more than remain with his guns. During defensive fighting in August 1941, Pentti volunteered for numerous patrol missions. Behind Soviet lines, some lasted several days. The patrols reached the Aunus River and the approaches to the town of Aunus. Such missions gathered valuable information about enemy positions and movements. Operating behind enemy lines was extremely dangerous. A small patrol could not survive a prolonged battle against a larger Soviet unit. It had to move rapidly and avoid detection. If discovered, the return journey could become a fight for survival. Pentti led these missions voluntarily. His official citation described them as difficult, long-lasting, and highly successful. In September, his role changed again. On September 13, 1941, Finnish forces fought for the village of Nurmoila. Soviet armored vehicles were involved in the battle. Rapid anti-tank action was necessary. Pentti did not remain behind. According to his citation, he personally took control of an anti-tank gun. He moved it quickly into firing position. Then he opened fire. Within a short period, Pentti destroyed Soviet armored cars and tanks. The commander of the anti-tank company was therefore personally operating a gun in battle. The action demonstrated both technical skill and personal courage, but an even more dangerous situation developed on October 2, 1941. Near the Svir hydroelectric plant, Soviet forces launched a major attack. According to the citation, an entire enemy division participated. Around 20 heavy Soviet tanks advanced with the assault. The tanks weighed approximately 32 tons. The Finnish anti-tank weapons initially appeared unable to penetrate them even at extremely short range. The situation was critical. The heavy tanks entered the Finnish infantry positions. The defensive line could collapse. Pentti quickly recognized that normal anti-tank fire was not working. He ran to the guns. He encouraged the crews and directed their fire at the tank's tracks. The objective was no longer to penetrate the strongest armor. The tanks first had to be immobilized. The tactic worked. Several tanks lost their tracks and became unable to move. Finnish soldiers could then approach the immobilized vehicles and destroy them with explosives. According to the official citation, the turrets were blown open and the Soviet crews inside were killed. Pentti's actions on October the 2nd demonstrated exceptional composure. He faced a situation in which the available weapons appeared ineffective. Instead of withdrawing, he changed the tactic. Fire was directed at the tracks rather than the main armor. The tank stopped, and the armored spearhead could be destroyed. Decisions made within minutes could determine the fate of an entire defensive position. Pentti's actions were quickly recognized. On October 19, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Lieutenant Arvo Veikko Pentti a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, second class. His knight number was 29. The official citation emphasized three major elements. First were his voluntary and highly successful patrol missions behind enemy lines during August. Second was the battle at Nurmoila on September 13, where Pentti personally took control of an anti-tank gun and destroyed enemy armored vehicles. Third was the battle at the Svir hydroelectric plant on October 2nd, where he directed the defense against heavy Soviet tanks and rapidly changed tactics when normal anti-tank fire failed. Only 1 month later, on November 19, 1941, Pentti was promoted to captain. His military career continued. During 1942, he remained commander of the anti-tank gun company in Infantry Regiment 44. From 1942 until 1943, Pentti completed Cadet Course number 26. In 1943, he served as a company commander at Infantry Training Center 23. In the summer of 1944, the Soviet Union launched its major offensive. Pentti returned to Infantry Regiment 44. He served as company commander, regimental officer, and battalion commander. In July 1944, the regiment fought in Ladoga, Karelia. One of the most important battlefields was Nitjärvi. Pentti was wounded there on July 11, 1944. He survived the war. After the Continuation War, Pentti remained in the Finnish military for several years. Post-war, Finland soon became involved in the weapons cache case. Pentti was arrested in connection with the investigation and spent approximately 22 months in detention between 1946 and 1948. He left active military service on November 26, 1948. His life then moved in a completely different direction. Pentti became a farmer in Heminkiro. Later, he entered politics. He was elected to the Finnish Parliament in 1958 and remained a member of Parliament until 1970, among the most important positions of his political career was Minister of Defense, a post he held in several governments during the 1960s and early 1970s. In 1972, his career changed again. Arvo Pentti became director of the Finnish Security Intelligence Service. He served in that position until 1978 and received the title of police counselor. The former anti-tank officer and Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, therefore, later became a farmer, member of parliament, defense minister and head of Finland's security police. In the reserve, Pentti was promoted to major in 1956 and lieutenant colonel on June 4, 1966, Arvo Veikko. Pentti died in Heminkiiro on February 1, 1986. He was 70 years old. He was buried in the old cemetery in Heminkiiro. Pentti's life was extraordinary. During the Winter War, he fought at Suma and Viipuri and was wounded. During the Continuation War, he voluntarily led long patrols deep behind enemy lines. At Nurmoila, he personally operated an anti-tank gun. At the Sphere, he faced heavy Soviet tanks that ordinary anti-tank fire initially could not stop. Pentti ordered his men to fire at the tracks. The tanks were immobilized and then destroyed. On October 19, 1941, these actions earned him the Mannerheim Cross. After the war, his career continued on entirely different battlefields. In Parliament, at the Ministry of Defense, and at the head of the Finnish Security Intelligence. Service Arvo Veikko Pentti Winter War. Veteran anti-tank officer, patrol leader, lieutenant. Later, lieutenant colonel, member of parliament. Minister of Defense. Director of the Finnish Security Intelligence Service at Knight of the Mannerheim Cross. Number 29. Number 30. Hans Olof von Essen, Knight of the Mannerheim Cross. Number 30. Hans Olof von Essen. Von Essen's story introduces another very different kind of officer. He was a professional cavalry officer, military attaché, regimental commander, and international-level equestrian. When he received the Mannerheim Cross in October 1941, he was a lieutenant colonel commanding the Uusimaa Cavalry Regiment. Hans Olof von Essen was born in Lappeenranta on December 31, 1900. His parents were Major General Georg Didrik von Essen and Saga Augusta Gustava Adelaide Armfeldt. Von Essen grew up in a military family and participated in the Finnish Civil War while still very young. He volunteered with forces at Palinki and served in several white formations. His wartime service included Kerava, Nikkola, and Palinki. After the war, von Essen chose a professional military career. He completed the first course of the Finnish Cadet School in 1919 and 1920 and began serving with the Uusimaa Cavalry Regiment. He worked as a junior officer, adjutant, and later squadron commander. Cavalry became more than simply a branch of service for von Essen. He also became an exceptionally skilled horseman. Von Essen studied at the Strömsholm Riding School in Sweden in 1925 and 1926, and later competed internationally in several European countries. He won the Finnish Army's top eventing competition 4 consecutive times between 1926 and 1929. In 1928, von Essen represented Finland in equestrian eventing at the Amsterdam Olympic Games and finished 5th in the individual competition. His military career continued at the same time. Von Essen commanded military training institutions, attended the Finnish War College from 1933 until 1935, and qualified as a general staff officer on June 12, 1938. From 1937 until 1939, he served as Finland's military attaché in Warsaw, Prague, and Bucharest. This gave him an unusual perspective on Europe's rapidly deteriorating political situation immediately before the Second World War. When the Winter War began on November 30, 1939, von Essen returned to field command. He commanded Infantry Regiment 26 on the Karelian Isthmus. The Winter War gave him experience commanding a large combat formation, while Finland fought an overwhelmingly stronger enemy. The war ended on March 13, 1940. During the interim peace, von Essen remained in the Finnish Defense Forces. He was promoted to lieutenant colonel on November 9, 1940. In the summer of 1941, Finland and the Soviet Union were again at war. At the beginning of the Continuation War, von Essen received command of the Uusimaa Cavalry Regiment. The regiment belonged to the Finnish Cavalry Brigade. Although the traditional role of cavalry had changed in modern warfare, mounted formations could still be useful in Finland's heavily forested terrain and limited road network. They could move rapidly through areas where ordinary vehicles had difficulty operating. Mobility became the central element of von Essen's action that earned the Mannerheim Cross. During the Finnish offensive of 1941, Soviet forces were retreating through Ladoga Karelia toward Kaunas and later the Svir River. As they withdrew, they attempted to establish new defensive positions on favorable terrain. If they succeeded, Finnish forces would have to attack those positions directly. That would mean delay and heavy casualties. Von Essen was given a mission designed to prevent this. His reinforced regiment was ordered to conduct a long parallel pursuit through difficult terrain. The objective was to move alongside the Soviet withdrawal route and strike before the enemy had time to establish a new defensive line. The mission was extremely demanding. According to the official Mannerheim Cross citation, the pursuit covered approximately 50 kilometers. The terrain was difficult. The soldiers were required to make extreme physical efforts. At the same time, the movement had to remain fast enough to prevent the Soviet command from learning about the Finnish maneuver in time. Von Essen directed the operation with determination. His regiment moved through the difficult terrain and achieved complete surprise. According to the official citation, Finnish forces destroyed 4 enemy companies during the operation. They also disrupted the enemy command structure. The result was much greater than a local victory. Von Essen's troops prevented Soviet forces from establishing a defensive position on terrain highly favorable to them. As a result, the Finnish main forces were able to continue their rapid advance toward a distant objective. The official citation also stated that the maneuver avoided the need for a costly frontal attack by the main Finnish forces. This is what makes von Essen's action particularly interesting. His Mannerheim Cross was not based on personally destroying a tank or capturing a single bunker. It recognized the command of a mobile regiment in a maneuver that changed the course of a larger operation. Speed, surprise, using difficult terrain, and disrupting the enemy's defensive plan before it could be completed. At the same time, the operation potentially saved many Finnish soldiers from a costly frontal assault. Von Essen was wounded at Samajärvi on September 2, 1941. His wound did not prevent his recommendation for the Mannerheim Cross from proceeding. On October 22, 1941, Commander-in-Chief Mannerheim appointed Lieutenant Colonel Hans Olof von Essen a Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, 2nd class. His Knight number was 30. The official citation emphasized his excellent leadership and courage, especially during the approximately 50-kilometer parallel pursuit. Von Essen continued commanding the Uusimaa Cavalry Regiment after receiving the cross. His continuation war service included Ladoga Karelia, Kaunas, the Karelian Isthmus, and Ilomantsi. On November 1, 1942, he was promoted to colonel. During the final phase of the war, his duties changed. In 1944, von Essen was appointed Finland's military attaché in Stockholm. He served there until 1946. After the war, von Essen remained in the Finnish Defense Forces for a short time and served as head of the Pori military district in 1946. He retired from active military service on September 11, 1946. His civilian career then began. Von Essen worked as an inspector for the Teollisuus Palo Insurance Company from 1946 until 1959. In 1959, he founded Suomen Teollisuuden Vartiointi Oy and served as its managing director until 1968. He later continued working with industrial fire protection organizations. Equestrian sports remained important throughout his post-war life. Von Essen held positions in the Finnish Equestrian Federation and several riding organizations. During the 1952 Helsinki Olympic Games, he directed the show jumping competition. He also participated actively in the organization of the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. In 1954, von Essen was one of the men who signed the founding charter of the Foundation of the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. He served on its board from 1954 until 1960 and later as a deputy member. Hans Olaf von Essen died in Halikko on August 23, 1973. He was 72 years old. He was buried in Halikko. Von Essen's life connected very different worlds. A young volunteer in the War of 1918, professional cavalry officer, Olympic-level equestrian, military attaché in European capitals, regimental commander during the Winter War, and commander of a mobile cavalry regiment during the Continuation War. In 1941, one demanding operation became decisive, approximately 50 kilometers through difficult terrain. A regiment moving parallel to the retreating enemy. The Soviet forces do not know it is coming. The Finns strike by surprise. 4 enemy companies are destroyed. The enemy command is disrupted. A new defensive line cannot be established. And the finish. Main forces can continue advancing without a costly frontal assault. This was operational leadership in which the decisions of one commander influenced the next battles of thousands of soldiers. On October 22, 1941, that leadership earned von Essen the Mannerheim Cross. Hans Olaf von Essen, cavalry officer, Olympic equestrian. Winter War regimental commander, commander of the Uusimaa Cavalry Regiment, lieutenant colonel, later, colonel knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 30. These 10 men form another chapter in the history of the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. We have now reached Knights number 21 through 30, 10 men. 10 different paths through war. Among them were young privates and corporals, experienced officers, company commanders, and men responsible for entire military formations. Their ranks, backgrounds, and duties were different, but one thing connected them. Their actions in war were considered so exceptional that they were appointed Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. This chapter once again demonstrated how different the actions behind Finland's most prestigious wartime military decoration could be. Some commanded soldiers during major attacks, others fought directly on the front line. Some volunteered for missions from which returning safely was far from certain. Others had only seconds to make decisions that could determine the fate of an entire unit. We encountered young men whose adult lives had effectively begun in wartime, and we encountered experienced professional officers responsible for hundreds or even thousands of soldiers. Knight number 21 began this chapter. From there, we moved one by one toward number 30. Along the way, we encountered very different soldiers, combat messengers, machine gunners, and submachine gunners, anti-tank specialists, Jaeger commanders, patrol officers, and cavalry commanders. Each experienced the war from a different perspective. For a frontline soldier, war could mean a few meters of forest, an enemy machine gun position, and the next piece of cover. For a company commander, it meant responsibility for dozens of men. For a regimental commander, the decisions could influence an entire battle. But regardless of rank, one central principle of the Mannerheim Cross remained the same. Rank itself was not decisive. Actions were. Perhaps the clearest examples in this chapter were some of its youngest knights. Ahti Heino was still a private. He was only 20 years old when he became Knight of the Mannerheim Cross, number 27. During attacks, he repeatedly fought among the first men forward. At Villavara, he voluntarily joined the attack of another Finnish formation when its advance was beginning to fail. With his submachine gun in his hands, Heino moved forward. Others followed. He was seriously wounded. He received the Mannerheim Cross. After recovering, he returned to the front. Only months later, he was killed at Krivi when Finnish artillery accidentally fell short. He was still only 20 years old. Matti Varstala was also remarkably young. At only 21, the second lieutenant was already commanding patrols, attacks, and major combat situations on the Karelian Isthmus. He captured important positions, led breakthroughs, and carried responsibilities that would have seemed almost unimaginable for someone so young in peacetime. Varstala survived the fighting of 1941. But in the summer of 1944, he was killed on the Karelian Isthmus at only 24 years of age. Tauno Toivo Savolainen demonstrated another kind of personal courage. He served as a combat messenger. His duties constantly forced him to move through areas where enemy soldiers could appear without warning. In August 1941, he twice encountered groups of enemy soldiers within only a few days. He fought, he captured prisoners, and he survived situations in which he was effectively alone. Valdemar Kosonen demonstrated what individual initiative could mean in close combat. When an enemy position stopped the Finnish advance, he attacked with hand grenades and explosive charges. When a tank penetrated Finnish positions, he volunteered to help destroy it. When someone was needed for a dangerous mission, Kosonen stepped forward. Arvo Pentti's story showed another form of anti-tank warfare. At the Svir River, heavy Soviet tanks advanced against Finnish positions. Normal anti-tank fire initially appeared unable to stop them. Pentti changed the tactic. He ordered the guns to fire at the tracks. The tanks were immobilized. Then they could be destroyed at close range. Pentti's life later continued in an entirely different world. He became a member of parliament, minister of defense, and eventually director of the Finnish Security Intelligence Service. Night number 30, Hans Olof von Essen, ended this chapter with yet another completely different story. Olympic-level equestrian, professional officer, military attaché, and commander of the Uusimaa Cavalry Regiment. In his case, the decisive achievement was not a single moment of close combat. It was leadership. An approximately 50-kilometer parallel pursuit through difficult terrain allowed his forces to surprise the retreating enemy. The Soviet defensive organization was disrupted before a new line could properly be established. At the same time, the Finnish main forces avoided what might have become a costly frontal assault. These stories once again demonstrate that the Knights of the Mannerheim Cross cannot be described as one single type of soldier. They were different people. Different ages, different ranks, different backgrounds. Some were professional soldiers, some were farmers, some were workers, some had barely begun their adult lives. War placed them in situations where their actions eventually entered Finnish military history. Not all of them survived. Some were killed only months after receiving the Mannerheim Cross. Others lived for decades and built completely new lives after the war. The Mannerheim Cross permanently connected their names to the same history. But our journey does not end with number 30. There were 191 Knights of the Mannerheim Cross. That means there are still many extraordinary stories ahead. In the next chapter, we continue with Knights number 31 through 40. Once again, their names, duties, and battles will take us into new parts of the history of the Winter War and the Continuation War. We will continue exactly where we stopped today. Night number 31. That is where the next chapter begins. If you want to follow this entire series from the first night of the Mannerheim Cross to the last, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and tell us in the comments. Which knight in this episode left the strongest impression on you? Was it the tragic fate of young Ahti Heino, Matti Varstala carrying extraordinary responsibility at only 21, Tauno, Savolainen fighting enemy patrols while alone, Arvo Pentti's anti-tank battle at the Svir, or Hans Olof von Essen's long and decisive maneuver around the enemy flank? Leave your choice in the comments. Thank you for watching. This was Knights of the Mannerheim Cross, numbers 21 through 30. Next episode, Knights 31 through 40. The story continues.